we're hearing from another champion of the bio-based industry from within inside a big brand, L'Oreal. Transformation of our ingredient portfolio, achievements and the journey ahead. Delighted to welcome back to the conference Fabien Deswarte from L'Oreal. Fabien.
Great morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Leo, for the kind introduction. It's a great pleasure to be back in The Hague for the 5th year running. L'Oreal has been a proud sponsor of Bio-Innovation Europe for 5 years, because we believe it's one of the most attended events in the bio-innovation space in Europe. And I'm Fabien Deswarte. I'm head of strategic partnership in L'Oreal's research on innovation. And my role, to keep it simple, is all about listening, finding, and working alongside external partners that can help us develop the next generation of cosmetic ingredients. So L'Oreal set up a sustainability program back in 2020 that's running for 10 years. So we are about halfway this program. So that's why we thought it would be useful and interesting to give you an update on where we stand, what progress we've made so far, the findings we've made along the way, and then talk a little bit about our priorities going forward and the challenges we need to tackle collectively to ensure that we deploy the sustainability solutions needed. So first, a little bit about us, because when you think about L'Oreal, you might think about L'Oreal Paris, which is one of our brands, but you might not know much about L'Oreal's group. So L'Oreal Group is a 100-year-old company that was set up by a very entrepreneurial French chemist called Eugène Schweller. Ever since, L'Oreal's focus has been on beauty, solely on beauty. So we're working across all the beauty categories, product categories, that you can see on the slide. So skincare, fragrance, makeup, hair care and hair coloration, and more recently augmented beauty with some of the devices you can see on the slide. We have now over 40 international brands, including 12 billionaire brands. Some are on the slides. Kerastase, for example, Maybelline, or La Roche-Posay. In terms of our research, just a few figures. We have over 4,000 scientists. We spend over €1 billion a year on research. We launch about over 3,000 products a year, and we file over 700 patents a year, again, solely on beauty. In terms of our sustainability journey, so we being the number one company in the beauty sector. Very early on, we thought we had to be exemplary in terms of sustainability. So over 30 years ago, we decided to set up our first environmental lab to evaluate the environmental impact of our products. We then moved on tackling the impact of our factories on distribution center, so the carbon and the water usage. And back in 2013, we established our first sustainability program, focusing on reducing our direct environmental impact. And this led to a major transformation of the company. Following that, in 2020, we set up our existing sustainability program called L'Oreal for the Future. And this time, the focus is not solely on reducing the impact of our own activities, but also reducing the impact of across our value chain, so upstream and downstream our activities. In terms of the sustainability program is built around 4 pillars. First is steward the climate transition, so it's all about decarbonization, reducing our CO2 emissions. Then safeguard nature. Here it's all about defossilization, ingredients that are used in our products. And I will tell you a bit more about this, and that will be a major focus of my presentation. Third, driving circularity by transitioning to more circular packaging systems. And lastly, supporting communities across upstream our supply chains. If we focus on the pillar safeguarding nature, which is a key focus for the department I'm of, one of the key objectives our key objectives for 2030 is to source over 75% of our ingredients from nature or from recycled materials. And by nature, we mean from bio-based feedstocks, but also from abundant minerals, because many inorganic ingredients are used in cosmetics. Think about inorganic UV filters in sun care products, or pigments in makeup. But also from recycled materials. In this case, we're talking about byproducts, post-consumer side streams, or even CO2. So in terms of achievements, so what have we achieved over the last 5 years? First, before I start to give you some figures about where we stand with the defossilization of our ingredient portfolio, I should say that we very early on realized that we had to develop sustainability evaluation methodologies, because we had to make sure that what we did really did have a positive impact. So just to give you an example, I mentioned earlier on that we want our inorganic ingredients to be derived from abundant minerals. Okay, that's great, but what do we mean by abundant? So that seems like a very simple question, but when you dig into it, then you realize very quickly that this is very, very complex. So we decided then to team up with the French Geological Survey called BRGM, and we developed with them a methodology to evaluate the abundance of minerals. So this methodology has been published and is freely available on the internet. Another example is the evaluation of the environmental impact of cosmetic products. 3 years ago, we decided to join up with other partners in the sector to develop a methodology to evaluate cosmetic product across their life cycle, from the sourcing of the ingredient all the way to the end of life of the products. So this initiative is now involving over 70 players, including Beiersdorf and Unilever, and I believe they're talking later on. As discussed earlier on, I think we also realized that we're not going to achieve our ambitions if we do it alone. So we're already working with a lot of external partners, but we realized that we had to develop new engagement models to ensure that we met our target. So we continue to work with, of course, our existing ingredient suppliers. That's why we did, for example, with DSM on the greenification of vitamin C, which is a very well-known actives in beauty. We also established many more ways of working with new to beauty players, and in particular startups. So like Mercedes, we set up a startup incubator. We also started to invest through our CVC into a number of startups, especially in the biotech space, and you can see some example on the slide. We also realized that to bridge the gap between what was discovered in startups in the lab and commercial production, sometimes we had to create alliances. And here is an example that actually I talked about last year on this very stage with two of our partners, so a French biotech company called Abolis, maybe Tristan is in the room, I don't know, and one of our suppliers, ingredient supplier Evonik, whereby Abolis is proving the technology at lab scale. Evonik is then scaling up the process and bringing the ingredient to market for L'Oréal to use. We also believe that some challenges can only be tackled taking a multi-partner approach. So this is what we did a few years back when we co-invested with two of our competitors, KO and Unilever, in a joint venture led by the US biotech company called Geno. We're also now part of the Bio-Based Industry Consortium, BIC. I won't tell you much more, but I know that there's a number of representatives of BIC here today. And last but not least, we've always been working with academics, but we believe that's something we need to strengthen. And only last year, we've decided to set up a new partnership with Institut Pasteur in the area of longevity, which is a key focus for the sector. Last but not least, we also created an accelerator a year ago with a 100 million euro fund. The idea is to fast-tracking the deployment of technologies, near-market technologies, so TRL 7+, responding to some of our unmet sustainability needs. So now to give you some figures about where we stand with the defossilization of our ingredient portfolio. I'm pleased to say that between 2020 and 2025, we reduce our dependence on fossil-derived ingredient by 8%. So we increasing from the number of the volumes of ingredient coming from nature and recycled materials from 59% in 2020 to 67% today. So let me tell you that wasn't an easy task. It wasn't a walk in the park, so to say. It's for many reasons, and some were mentioned earlier on. Externally, when we started that program, the solution didn't exist. Often we were the first company or the sole company to ask for this green alternative. And also, unlike in the automotive, in the cosmetic industry, the volumes we are using are relatively quite small. So convincing some of the suppliers to switch was very often quite challenging. And then internally, and that was again discussed during the panel earlier on, we had to have a major alignment effort. Major alignment effort was required to ensure that all the entities within the group were aligned, that we're all pulling in the same direction, from purchasing to our brands to our research. As mentioned earlier on, our ambition for 2030 is that 75% of our ingredients are derived from nature and recycled materials, so we're halfway. So we have quite a few challenging years going ahead of us, but we are confident that we'll get there. Of course, moving away from fossil-derived ingredients is a great step in the right direction, but for us, it's only half of the equation. We also need to make sure that the processes that are being used to convert the feedstocks, the renewable feedstock, circular feedstock into our ingredients, are also renewable. And that's why we've invested with partners for 20, 30 years in the area of green chemistry, co-extraction, and more recently, biotech. And I'm pleased to say that today, so we track the number of ingredients that very carefully that are derived using this methodology internally to check progress. And I'm pleased to say that over 800 ingredients today in our products are produced using green chemistry or green extraction, and over 120 are produced by biotech. Here are some examples of products containing these ingredients. We think about actives such as hyaluronic acid, which is a very well-known ingredient produced by biotech. We talked earlier on about propylene glycol, which is a well-known solvent in cosmetics that can be produced from glycerol, a byproduct of biodiesel. So that was for what we've achieved so far on some of our key learnings. Now looking at what's the next 4 or 5 years, the key priority for us is to first deploy the dropping alternatives, so further deploy the dropping alternatives we need to meet our objectives. So in that case, we know what they are, we know what the ingredients are, we know what the brands, which brands to target, we know what the partners we need to reach that. But I have to say that what we've learned over the last 5 years is that it's partners that are developing dropping alternatives often face challenges going to scale. Sometimes we see failures. Also, our factories are across the world, so we can't rely on one single source of these greener alternatives. So for that reason, we're also very actively scouting near-market solutions. And that's why we set up, one of the reasons we set up the accelerator last year, and we have one call for applications every year. We support through following the first round last year. We are working with 3 partners. The second call just was closed last month, and we'll be announcing the successful candidate after the summer. And then a third call, if you are interested, or if you know anybody interested, a third call will be launched earlier next year. So at the very start of the program, we have major focus was to identify, develop dropping alternatives to some of our fossil-derived ingredients. Over the last few years, we switched our efforts to developing what I would call novel, green by design ingredients. Here, the starting point is not to replace an existing ingredient, but rather develop a completely novel ingredient, but with new performance or extra performance. So we talked a lot about performance earlier on. For us, it's also key. Sustainability is great, but performance needs to be there too. What you can see here on the slide is the picture of the site of startups called Microfit, who are based in the south of France, in which we invested. And these guys are producing microalgae that can be then used to produce a wide range of ingredients. So very beautiful setup, as you can see. And I'm pleased to say that we'll be launching our first product next year, including one of their ingredients. Multifunctionality is also key for us. Paul yesterday mentioned that we need to have cost parity between green ingredient and fossil-derived ingredient. Rather than talking in terms of cost parity, I think we should talk about cost in use parity. So if a product, an ingredient has multiple benefits, this can justify a higher price because you'll have its cost in use will be much lower. And of course, we talked about AI a lot, but what we can see is AI is speeding up massively the development and discovery and the scale up and industrialization of next generation ingredients. It's also important that we unite to unlock the full potential of bio, and we joined a couple of years ago a coalition called Advanced Biotech for Sustainability. I won't say much more because Massimo will talk about this very exciting initiative later on. We've already published 2 reports. The idea is to provide fact-based insights into the potential of biotech, and then some actionable roadmaps. Again, I will let Massimo to tell you more about this very exciting initiative this afternoon. And last but not least, it's important in this transition that will enable consumers as well to make more sustainable choices. So I mentioned this initiative, the Eco Beauty Score. So it's an industry-wide initiative. One of the objectives was to develop a joint methodology. The other one was to develop a scoring system, as you can see on the slide. So it is a rating from A to E, a bit like in your light bulbs or on your fridge. And we are very busy rolling out the scoring system across our brands. Leo, I think I'm good. Okay. So I'll just conclude because I think I'm running out of time. We have made some great process in our defossilization journey, but clearly there's a lot of challenges. It's been said many times before, the key is to partner. So partner to innovate, partner also we need to unite as well to make sure we've got the right ecosystem in place, the right support for the industry to flourish. I know Europa Bio mentioned the Biotech Act 2 yesterday. For us, sustainability is great, but performance is also key. We need both performance and sustainability. And on this note, I'd like to thank you all for your attention. Olivier Roland and I are here until lunchtime if you have any questions or comments.